Hi everyone, welcome to V-Talks. I hope you have enough womb in your brain because today we're going to talk about the uterus. So, uterus is actually derived from the Latin word for womb, which makes a lot of sense because one of the functions of the uterus is pregnancy, in which it does serve as a womb to incubate the zygote and eventually the fetus. Additionally, the uterus is also crucial in various functions of the female reproductive system, such as pregnancy, menstruation, and childbirth. It is quite arguably one of the most important and powerful organs in the female reproductive system. The uterus is about the size and shape of a pear, but during pregnancy it can expand to much, much bigger, which is what makes it so cool. So, without any further ado, after a brief overview of the uterus, let's jump right into the structure. So the uterus is actually split into three different parts. The first part, the most lower part, is the cervix, which is actually a whole separate organ on its own, and we'll talk about that next episode. The second part is right here. It's the corpus, or the body of the uterus. And then the last part is the fundus, or the top of the uterus. So the corpus, or the body of the uterus, actually has thicker walls than the rest of the uterus because this right here is usually where the zygote will implant itself and usually where the fetus will grow in the body of the uterus. The fundus also serves various functions. It's the top of the uterus, and it's also where eggs come into the uterus because the fallopian tubes are attached to the uterus at the fundus, so at the top of the organ. So, aside from the general structure of the uterus, let's dive right into the histology, or the different tissue makeup of the uterus. So, in addition to being split into three parts, the uterine walls themselves are made up of three different types of tissue. The first and outermost layer, the perimetrium, protects the uterus from friction by secreting a simple watery serous fluid that is used for lubrication. Within the perimetrium is the myometrium. The myometrium contains layers of visceral muscle tissue. This tissue is used by the uterus to expand during pregnancy and contract during childbirth. So past the myometrium is the endometrium. The endometrium borders the lumen, or the innermost part of the uterus, and is made up of columnar epithelial tissue. This, along with its vast amount of exocrine glands and highly connected vascular tissue, allows the endometrium to support an embryo or fetus while it develops, which is quite frankly incredible. So aside from having three different types of tissue, the uterus also has three different types of musculature. It's a very muscular organ. So let's explore that. The muscular of the uterus is also split into three layers. These include the stratum supravasculaire, which is the outer longitudinal layer that continues into the fallopian tubes. Next is the vascular layer, the stratum vasculaire, which contains many spiral-shaped interlocking muscles and a plethora of blood vessels. The last layer is the innermost layer of muscles, which contains fibers layered longitudinally and obliquely. So, in addition to its complex structure, the uterus also plays a key role in many of the major processes of the female reproductive system, two of which being pregnancy and menstruation. So in menstruation, the egg will be released from the ovary, swept into the fallopian tubes, and then come into the uterus. But the ovaries will also be releasing a hormone, progesterone, which stimulates the growth of the uterine lining in preparation for a zygote, in preparation for a pregnancy. But if the egg is left unfertilized, that extra uterine lining will disintegrate and become a pool of blood at the bottom of the uterus, which will then be expelled through the process of menstruation. So aside from menstruation, if the egg is fertilized, then the uterus will play a key role in pregnancy. The uterus can expand an incredible amount during pregnancy in order to host a fetus, and also during childbirth, those muscles in the myometrium can contract and expand in order to cause contractions to birth the fetus. So, despite the hardiness of the uterus, it can also succumb to various diseases, one of the most common of which is endometriosis. So endometriosis is a very interesting disease because we can incorporate a social lens and a biological lens in studying it, as we can with most diseases. So with endometriosis, what happens is the endometrium, or the layer of the uterus closest to the lumen, actually will grow sort of inside the tissue layers of the uterus. So the uterine lining will grow inside the tissue layers versus out into the uterus. And what will happen is, because it will shed every month, it will create a lot of internal bleeding, because as those tissues are disintegrating, they won't be shed out. So, endometriosis, one of the characteristic symptoms is very, very severe period pain. So very, very severe pain during menstruation, difficulty conceiving, as well as just generally a very rough time with menstruation. And oftentimes, endometriosis goes undiagnosed because people will brush it off as a normal symptom, or people will be too shy to talk about intense period pain, or people who do talk about it will be labeled as hysteric or ridiculed, or be labeled as weak for not being able to handle the pain. And as a result, various cases of endometriosis can go undiagnosed. And this shows why it's important to remove the taboo around reproductive health and to listen to those who have health conditions, because if we do, we can improve the rates of diagnosis and improve the reproductive health of those around us. So, in conclusion, the uterus is an incredibly powerful and impactful organ of the reproductive system. It plays a key role in various reproductive processes such as menstruation and pregnancy and childbirth, but it can also succumb to diseases. So if you experience anything abnormal, please consult your physician and please establish a level of normalcy for your body. Really get to know yourself. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Detox. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and as always, we'll see you next time.